In the final, suffocating hours of April 1945, the city of Berlin burned. Above ground, the grand avenues and historic squares are a landscape of ruin, pounded into dust by Soviet artillery. But below the surface, inside the damp, concrete maze of the Führerbunker, the Third Reich is still alive, living out its final surreal moments. After the war, as the world sifted through the wreckage of a continent, one question captured the public imagination. What became of the place where Adolf Hitler spent his last days? The answer is a strange and winding story of demolition, deliberate denial, and the quiet, systematic erasure of one of history's darkest stages. The story of the bunker does not begin in the desperation of 1945, but nearly a decade earlier, in the manufactured optimism of 1936. As Berlin prepared to host the Olympic Games, a symbol of Germany's supposed return to the world stage, engineers were at work beneath the gardens of the Reich Chancellery. They constructed a modest air raid shelter, a practical but unremarkable concrete box designed to protect government staff from the theoretical threat of a future air war. For years it was little more than a reinforced basement, a footnote in the grand architectural plans of the Nazi regime. But by 1943 the war had turned. Allied bombing raids, once sporadic and distant, had become a nightly reality for the citizens of Berlin. The capital was no longer a safe haven, and the original shelter was deemed insufficient. Hitler, increasingly paranoid and isolated, ordered a massive expansion of the underground complex. A new, deeper level known as the Führerbunker was excavated beneath the existing shelter. Completed in early 1944, it was a fortress buried deep within the earth. Protected by a roof of reinforced concrete nearly 13 feet thick, and with walls of similar strength, it was designed to withstand a direct hit from the heaviest bombs in the Allied arsenal. The complex was a claustrophobic world unto itself. It consisted of roughly 30 small rooms, connected by corridors barely wide enough for two people to pass. The air was stale, recycled by a diesel-powered ventilation system that hummed day and night, a constant reminder of the artificial world its inhabitants occupied. On January 16, 1945, with the Red Army crashing through the eastern frontiers of Germany, Hitler and his inner circle abandoned the Chancellery and moved underground permanently. He would never again see the light of day. Life in the bunker was divided into two distinct strata. The upper level, or Vorbunker, housed guards, administrative staff, and service personnel. The lower, deeper Führerbunker was the nerve center of the dying regime. It contained the map room, a small conference room, a telephone exchange that struggled to maintain contact with the outside world, and Hitler's private study. It was from these damp, flickering rooms that a broken man attempted to command armies that had already been shattered. Those who survived the final days would later describe the atmosphere as that of a collective tomb where everyone pretended life was still normal. As the Soviet ring tightened around Berlin, the pretense of normalcy became increasingly grotesque. The daily routine was a surreal mix of military procedure and impending doom. Hitler would emerge from his quarters for the daily situation conferences, where generals pointed at maps and moved counters, representing divisions that existed only on paper. The rumble of Soviet artillery became the constant, percussive soundtrack to their lives. On April 20th, Hitler's 56th birthday, the shelling became so intense that shells landed directly in the Chancellery garden, just feet above their heads, shaking dust from the concrete ceiling. It was on this day that his longtime companion, Eva Braun, moved into the bunker permanently, joining the coterie of secretaries, aides, and military officers who would witness the final act. In the last week of April, reality finally breached the concrete walls. The meals became rushed, the briefings more desperate. The gramophone played softly in the background, a pathetic attempt to drown out the sounds of the Götterdämmerung unfolding on the streets above. On April 29th, with Soviet troops fighting their way through the Tiergarten, only blocks away, Hitler married Eva Braun in a brief, nihilistic ceremony. That same night, he dictated his final political testament, a rambling, self-pitying document that blamed the war on international Jewry and the German people for failing him. The end came on April 30th. After a quiet lunch, Hitler and Eva Braun said their goodbyes to the remaining staff and retreated to his private study. A single gunshot echoed through the corridor. A few minutes later, the door was opened to reveal the scene. Their bodies were carried up the stairs to the Chancellery garden, placed in a shell crater, doused with gasoline, and set alight under the thunder of Soviet guns. The architect of a world war had been reduced to ash in his own backyard. 2 days later, Joseph Goebbels and his wife followed suit, ending their own lives and those of their 6 children inside the complex. On May the 2nd, the first soldiers of the Red Army entered the ruins. They found the Chancellery a smouldering shell, but the bunker below was battered but largely intact. The scene that greeted them was one of squalor and chaos, discarded papers, empty bottles, and the lingering smell of death. The Soviet Smersh counterintelligence units immediately went to work, securing the site and hunting for the one piece of evidence the world was waiting for. They found the charred remains in the garden and, through dental records, confirmed that Hitler was indeed dead. But Joseph Stalin, in a final, masterful stroke of disinformation, ordered the results to be kept secret. Publicly, the Soviets floated the narrative that Hitler might have escaped, perhaps to Argentina or a secret base in Antarctica. This deliberate ambiguity was a powerful political tool. It allowed Stalin to cast a shadow of doubt over the West, to suggest that the fascists were still at large, and that only the vigilance of the Soviet Union could protect the world. This official lie would fuel conspiracy theories for decades, adding another layer of myth to the concrete tomb buried beneath the streets of Berlin. In the immediate aftermath of the German surrender, the ruins of the Reich Chancellery and the bunker beneath it became more than just a site of historical significance. They became a potent symbol of a defeated ideology. For the Soviet Union, which now controlled this sector of Berlin, the physical annihilation of Hitler's seat of power was a political and psychological necessity. Between 1945 and 1949, a systematic campaign of demolition was carried out. The grand marble halls and imposing facades of the Chancellery, designed by Albert Speer to project power for 1,000 years, were methodically dismantled. The marble was reportedly used in the construction of a Soviet war memorial and in the renovation of a Moscow metro station, a final, ironic act of repurposing the symbols of the vanquished. But the bunker itself proved to be a far more stubborn opponent. In December of 1947, Soviet engineers attempted to obliterate the underground complex with explosives. They drilled holes into the thick concrete roof and planted heavy demolition charges. The resulting blasts were immense, shaking the ground and sending plumes of dust into the air. Yet, when the smoke cleared, the core structure of the fortress remained. The reinforced concrete, designed to withstand the heaviest Allied bombs, had survived the Soviet attempt at demolition. Some of the exterior corridors flooded with groundwater and a few internal walls collapsed, but the central rooms where the final drama had unfolded were damaged but not destroyed. After several failed attempts, the Soviets gave up on total annihilation and chose a simpler solution: burial. They pushed the rubble of the demolished Chancellery over the bunker's entrance, burying it under tons of broken marble and concrete, and left it to the silence of the earth. When the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, was formed in 1949 and took control of this part of Berlin, they continued the work the Soviets had begun. Their goal was not just to demolish the bunker, but to erase it from public memory. The site was scrubbed from official maps. No signs were erected, no historical markers were placed. The once manicured Chancellery Garden, the place where Hitler's body had been burned, was left as an empty, desolate wasteland, a patch of no man's land in the heart of the East German capital. It became a forbidden zone, a place that officially did not exist. Throughout the decades of the Cold War, the East German government maintained a strict policy of silence. The State Security Service, the Stasi, was tasked with ensuring that the site never became a focal point for morbid curiosity, or worse, a pilgrimage site for neo-Nazis. Whenever construction crews working on nearby projects accidentally broke through a wall or punched a hole into a buried chamber of the bunker complex, the response was swift and absolute. The breach would be reported, Stasi agents would arrive to secure the area, and the chamber would be immediately filled with sand and sealed with fresh concrete. The official order was always the same: seal it, say nothing. One such incident occurred in 1973 when engineers were laying the foundations for a new block of apartments on Vossstrasse, adjacent to the former Chancellery ground. Their heavy equipment punched through the concrete roof of one of the lower bunker rooms, revealing a dark, flooded interior. The work was halted, the Stasi were called, and within hours the hole was plugged. The apartment building was completed, its residents living their daily lives just feet above the buried tomb of the Third Reich, completely unaware of the history that lay beneath their feet. The bunker existed in a state of suspended animation, buried, silent, and forbidden. While East Germany was trying to forget, the West was becoming increasingly obsessed. For journalists, historians, and tourists on the other side of the Berlin Wall, the location of Hitler's bunker was one of the great, enduring mysteries of the post-war era. The question, where exactly is it, was a constant refrain, but the East German authorities gave no answers. The only information available came from grainy Soviet photographs taken in 1945 and the often contradictory testimonies of the few survivors who had escaped the bunker in the final days. This official silence in the physical barrier of the Berlin Wall created a fertile ground for myths and rumors to grow. Was the bunker still largely intact, a perfectly preserved time capsule of the Third Reich's last moments? Had the Soviets secretly preserved parts of it for their own purposes, perhaps as a training ground for their special forces? And the most persistent question, fueled by Stalin's original disinformation campaign, did Hitler really die there, or was the whole story a fabrication to cover his escape? The less that was known for certain, the more powerful the myth of the bunker became. It was a blank space on the map, and the human imagination rushed in to fill the void with speculation and conspiracy. For 40 years, the bunker remained in this state of limbo, a historical ghost haunting the border strip of a divided city. In the East, it was a state secret to be guarded. In the West, it was a historical puzzle to be solved. The physical reality of the structure, a damp, fractured and partially flooded concrete shell, was irrelevant. It had become a symbol, a place onto which both sides of the Cold War projected their own narratives of history, memory, and denial. The East Germans believed that by burying the concrete, they could bury the past. But as the events of 1989 would prove, some things cannot stay buried forever. The fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989 did more than just reunify a city. It opened up the ground beneath it to a new era of investigation. As the watchtowers and the barbed wire came down, the once forbidden death strip that had separated East and West was suddenly accessible. For the first time in over 40 years, historians and archaeologists had the opportunity to physically explore the historical heart of the Third Reich. In 1990, as workers began surveying the former chancellery grounds for new construction projects, they inevitably rediscovered the past. Their drills and excavators struck the hard resistance of reinforced concrete, and soon the ghostly outlines of the Führerbunker began to resurface. Exploratory digs revealed flooded stairwells, twisted steel doors that had been blasted off their hinges, and the remnants of decaying wartime fittings. The bunker had survived not as a pristine time capsule, but as a fractured, waterlogged ruin. The discovery placed the newly unified German government in an incredibly difficult position. The physical evidence of the site was now undeniable, and a decision had to be made. Should the bunker be fully excavated, documented, and perhaps even turned into a museum or memorial? The debate that followed was intense and deeply emotional. On one side, some historians and public figures argued that the site was a crucial piece of world history and should be preserved as a place of education. They contended that confronting the physical reality of the bunker was the only way to demystify it and rob it of its power. On the other side, many officials and Holocaust survivor groups warned that excavating the bunker would be a catastrophic mistake. They feared, with good reason, that the site would inevitably become a shrine for neo-Nazis and a macabre tourist attraction, a place where the perpetrators of genocide would be glorified. They argued that the best way to treat this dark place was to ensure it remained buried and forgotten. Ultimately, the German government chose the path of caution. The decision was made to seal the ruins permanently, to deny them the status of a monument. In 1992, the sections of the bunker that had been uncovered were blocked off one last time. Construction crews moved in, and new residential apartment buildings and a simple parking lot were built directly on top of the site. The government's logic was clear. The most powerful way to strip the bunker of its symbolic weight was to smother it with the mundane reality of everyday life. The place where a dictator had dreamed of world domination was now the place where Berlin residents parked their cars and took out their recycling. Despite the reburial, public curiosity did not die. Using the newly available Soviet records and survivor testimonies, historians were able to reconstruct the bunker's exact layout and superimpose it onto a modern map of Berlin. By the late 1990s, the precise location was no longer a secret. Tourists armed with guidebooks and maps began to flock to the area, congregating in the unremarkable parking lot behind an apartment block on Gertrude Kohlmarstrasse. They would stand there, looking at the gravel and the parked cars, trying to imagine the immense history that lay just a few feet beneath their feet. The sight of these informal gatherings made the Berlin city government realize that their policy of pure silence was no longer tenable. Ignoring the site was inadvertently adding to its mystique. A new approach was needed, one that would address the public's desire for information without creating the shrine they had long feared. The solution came ahead of the 2006 FIFA World Cup, when the city was preparing to welcome millions of international visitors. A small, discreet information panel was installed at the edge of the parking lot. The design of the sign is a masterclass in responsible historical curation. There are no dramatic photographs of Hitler, no sensationalist language, and no glorification of the events that took place there. It is a simple, factual sign that presents a diagram of the bunker's layout, a timeline of the final days, and a brief, sober explanation of what happened. It is a quiet acknowledgement, a gesture meant to inform, not to impress. It satisfies the need for knowledge while denying the site the grandeur of a monument. It says to the world, yes, this happened here. Now let us remember the facts and move on. Today, it is estimated that roughly 15 to 20% of the original concrete shell of the Führerbunker still lies buried beneath the ground. It is a fractured, flooded, and completely inaccessible ruin. For those who wish to understand the claustrophobic reality of the bunker, The nearby Berlin Story Museum offers a controlled and contextualized experience. The museum has built a partial reconstruction of Hitler's study and other rooms, allowing visitors to grasp the scale and atmosphere of the space without turning the authentic site into a relic. And above the original bunker itself, life goes on. A residential block stands where the Chancellery Garden once was. A small patch of grass and a children's playground are nearby, and the parking area which covers the heart of the lower bunker remains just that, a place for cars. A colossal past has been deliberately reduced to ordinary, forgettable space. The Führerbunker now exists only as a shadow beneath modern Berlin, buried, silent, and stripped of its symbolism. The story of its post-war journey is a powerful lesson in how a society can confront a toxic legacy. It reminds us that the darkest places in history can fade from physical sight, but their lessons must be kept in the light, not through grand monuments, but through quiet, factual remembrance. There is a unique weight to the air when you stand in a place where history has been intentionally buried. The parking lot that now covers the Führerbunker is perhaps one of the most mundane-looking historical sites in the world. There are no columns, no statues, no grand pronouncements, and yet that very ordinariness is the point. It is the final act in a long, deliberate process of demystification. For decades, the bunker was a myth, a ghost that haunted a divided city. In the East, it was a forbidden secret. In the West, it was a source of morbid fascination. But by burying the physical structure and marking it with only a simple sign, the city of Berlin has performed a kind of historical exorcism. It has refused to give the site the power of a shrine, choosing instead to let the quiet rhythm of daily life reclaim the ground. This story reminds us that memory is an active choice. A society can choose to build monuments that elevate the past, or it can choose to build parking lots that quietly contain it. The decision to erase the bunker from sight was not an act of forgetting. It was an act of profound remembrance. It acknowledges that some places are too dark to be preserved, and that the most powerful way to defeat a symbol of hatred is to strip it of all its power, leaving it as nothing more than a silent concrete shell buried beneath our feet.